Welcome. This is Function Operations. You can find it Chapter 6, Section 6 in your textbook. We're going to take a step back and review functions real quick. You should remember functions we looked at before. We read this, f of x, or a function of x is equal to 3x squared plus 3. So back at the beginning of the year, we solved problems like these, where we had to find f of any number. And they're really easy to do. All we have to do is plug them in to our equation for x. So f of negative 3 would equal 3 times negative 3 squared plus 3. And then we can solve that down. F of negative 3 is equal to negative 3 to the second power is positive 9. Positive 9 times 3 is 27. 27 plus 3 is 30. So f of negative 3 is equal to 30. You'll also see any letter doesn't have to be f. We could have g of x, or we have g of y, g of z. Anything for a function works, not just f of x. So if we want to find g of 6, it's the same process. We just want to plug it in for that x. So g of 6 is equal to 4 minus 3, not x. We're going to plug in our 6 there. So g of 6 would equal, we have to multiply this negative 3 times 6 first, and we get negative 18. So g of 6 would equal negative 14. So I want to review this really quickly because we're going to look at something a little bit more advanced. We're going to look at adding functions, subtracting functions, multiplying functions, dividing functions, putting functions inside of other functions. And I feel like this could maybe be useful in some different applications, like you're manufacturing some good in the world, and you want to see what will happen if you add this to kind of a recipe that's already made. So you're adding, you're subtracting, you're multiplying, you're dividing, to kind of get a product that is the best product you get. So this is what it looks like. These are kind of directions. We have f plus g of x. And all that means is we'll take our f of x and we'll add to it our g of x. So earlier, we would just add our f of x and our g of x and add them together. F minus g of x, we're going to subtract them. Fg of x, we're going to multiply f of x times g of x, and f divided by g of x, we're going to divide f of x and g of x. So these are just kind of instructions on what to do with our functions. So the problems will look something like this. We have our f of x here, and we have our g of x here. So if we want to find out, switch colors here, f plus g of 2, I can rewrite that as f of 2 plus g of 2. And I can solve that, just like we did in these problems. We found f of negative 3 and g of 6. So we can solve f of 2 and g of 2. To solve f of 2 and g of 2, I just plug in f of 2. F of 2 would be equal to 3 times 2 minus 2 plus g of 2 would equal 2 to the third power. So I'm just getting my f of 2 by plugging 2 into that equation. And it comes out right here. And my g of 2, I just plug in 2 into this equation here, and I get 2 to the third power. So if I simplify this down, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 2, plus 2 to the third power is 8. So 6 minus 2 plus 8. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. So if I add together the functions f of x and g of x and plug in 2 to them, I'm going to get 12. All right. Subtraction is going to be the same thing, except my sign right here is going to change. I'm going to make that minus, but it's going to be the exact same process. Multiplication and division might be a little bit different. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to erase this. All right, so multiplication, we have fg of 2. Now what that is I'm going to take f of 2, and I'm going to multiply it by g of 2. All right? So f of 2 is going to equal 3 times 2 minus 2. Now multiply that by g of 2, which is 2 to the third power. All right? The key here is we have to make sure that we simplify these down before we multiply them. All right? So if I work this down, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4, times 2 times 3, 8, and we get 32. All right? The same deal with my division. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to end up with f of 2 divided by g of 2. I've already figured out a couple times that f of 2 is going to be 4 over g of 2, 8, which we could reduce down to 1/2. All right, so that is adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing functions. All right? The next part is the fun part. We're going to take a function and stick it inside of another function. It's called a composite function. All right? So if I have two functions, my f of x, and I have my f of g, this sign here, this little bubble, means that we're going to take our g and we're going to stick it inside of our x. All right? So what that looks like is f of g of x. Actually, let me change the colors on here. I think it'll help you out a little bit. So if I have f of g of x, I'm going to take my g of x, I'm going to figure out what that is, and I'm going to plug it into my f of x. So basically, I'm going to take this, that's my g of x, and I'm going to stick it inside of this function. So to do that, f of g of x is going to equal 4 times x minus 3 minus 16. So I just took my g of x and I stuck it inside of my f of x. So I'm basically figuring out f of x minus 3. So to simplify this down, I could distribute my 4 here, and I get 4x minus 12 minus 16, which simplifies down to 4x minus 28. Alright, so this is my f of g of x. Alright, so now if I want to figure out what f of 9 would be, f of g of x of 9 would be, I can do this 2 ways. The first thing I'm going to do is just plug it in here and find f of 9 as we figure out our f of g of x. Actually, let me go back. That's not a good way to write it. We should write it as f of g of 9. Alright? So I plug in 9 in here, just like you'd think. And 4 times 9 is 36. 36 minus 28 is equal to 8, right? So f of g of 9 is equal to 8. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, let me erase some of this. Would be to find g of 9 and plug that in to my f of x. So we're taking this g of x function and plugging it inside the f of x function. That's what a composite function is. We take a function and we stick it inside of another one. So if I take g of 9, we get 9 minus 3 from our function right here. So g of 9 is equal to 6. Alright? So now if I take this value and I plug it in to my other function, my f of x function now, and find f of 6, I should get the same answer. 4 times 6 minus 16. So f of 6 is equal to 24 minus 16, which is also equal to 8. So there's 2 different ways we can figure out composite functions. We can take the whole function with the variables and stick it inside the other one, and then plug in the number that we're looking for, or we can do it one at a time. We can plug our 9 into our g of x function and get a number, like we did here, 6, and plug that 6 into our f of x function. So it's a function inside of another function. It can be a little bit complicated, but with some practice, you guys will get the hang of it. Alright, that is all today. I hope you enjoyed it.